All right, welcome back to online English class. So today is March 30th. It's a Monday. So we're going to run through some top of the week announcements. These are also available on RenWeb. To quickly remind you what we have in front of us for this week. Okay, so today your reading for Samuel Taylor Coleridge is due by 3 p.m. I need an email in my inbox from you articulating the percentage of Mr. Coleridge's work that you have read. All right, VGQs continue to be temporarily suspended. In terms of reading analysis, you don't have any new reading this week, but you do need to spend some time carefully rereading all the poems that we've discussed in class up to this point, and to begin preparing for your Unit 5 test. All right. Today we are going to be finishing OTN 6 about William Wordsworth's The Solitary Reaper. So you need to make sure that your OTN for that poem is completed, and it needs to be written in prose because you don't currently have an essay assignment out. All right, so your daily writing, your daily analytical writing needs to be being done on your OTNs. All right, I am not asking you for email confirmation of your completion of this OTN yet, but I will. All right. Now, ongoing assignments, important ongoing assignments. You need to continue drafting your sonnet. All right, your sonnet is going to be due the day of your test, which is going to be held this Friday. All right, your test on Unit 5, which is about poetry, romantic poetry specifically, is going to be due this Friday. All right, so I will send the prompt home for the test on Friday. You will take the test on Friday, all right, and you will get me your test by Monday of next week. All right, we'll talk more about that procedure later, but just overall, you need to make sure that you are preparing for that Unit 5 test. Now, the best way to do so is to download and to pay careful attention to your Unit 5 review guide. All right, obviously, we've already talked about the sonnet section of the test and how that is going to be evaluated in our first video lecture. If you want to go back to that and have some reminders, then you can do that. All right, you can just watch the minutes that are devoted to describing the sonnet portion of the test. All right, now the poems that you might be tested on the test include The Tiger, The Sick Rose, The World is Too Much With Us, Composed Upon Westminster Bridge, The Solitary Reaper, and Kubla Khan. If you're in honors, any of these poems are fair game. You will receive one. All right, you will write about one. If you're in regular, you get to choose your poem, prepare your explication, and turn it in on the day of the test. Okay, so that's a large advantage for you regular students. You get to hone in on one particular poem and not spend time preparing for the others. All right, if you're in honors, you earn that honors credit by a larger preparation load. Now remember, you'll be locating textual examples that have to do with rhythm and sound, connecting that to main idea, theme, tone of the speaker. You'll be looking at diction, imagery, and figurative language. All right, so that's just talking about the words in the text and the way they're arranged, whether into specific images or in figures of speech. Then you'll be talking about how the voice is characterized throughout the course of the poem, the speaker, how any symbols are developed in the poem, and finally, what the overarching theme of the poem is. All right, so make sure that you are preparing for that work that you have ahead of you at the end of this week. If you have questions, you can email me. I've got a few emails from people asking for feedback on their sonnets. I am getting to you. Again, I've got a very full inbox these days, so getting to things like feedback are just taking me some time. I will give you some feedback, okay? Just be patient, okay? So thank you for bearing with me. Thank you for being adaptable. All right, today we need to finish up OTN 6 on the Solitary Reaper. Okay, so if you will notice, the structure of this analysis mirrors the structure of your test explication outline. Okay, so we start with our SQ3R. We did that in our first lecture last Thursday. We began analyzing the word choice, syntax, imagery, sound devices, rhythm, structure used in the poem. All that list is just a list of any and all poetic devices that are relevant. Okay, and then today we are going to lead to some interpretive conclusions. We're going to use our analysis, the process of breaking down the language in the poem in order to come to some general conclusions, right, about the meaning of the poem, looking specifically at the symbolic significance of the central figure of the poem, the solitary reaper, looking specifically at the speaker's tone toward her, all right, so his attitude, how he is characterized, the speaker, and then finally bringing these two things together to answer the major question at the back of the poem, and that is just what is the thematic impression? What's the main idea here? What is Wordsworth saying in this poem, okay? So let's go ahead and turn our attention back to the poem. All right, so if you've been paying attention over the last couple days, you'll remember some basic things about the nature of the poem. All right, the speaker is an English traveler in the Scottish Highlands. All right, he's listening to the song, a very beautiful song that makes a lasting impression on him, sung by a Highland lass, a laborer, a field hand, working alone in the fields. All right, the poem is structured, it's a lyric, into 4 octets, all right, with alternating quatrain and then couplet quatrain. Okay, so A, B, C, C, D, D. It's written in iambic tetrameter, and that stays the same throughout the course of the poem. All right, the title emphasizes the singularity, the individuality of the reaper, the solitary reaper, who is a symbol and an embodiment of Wordsworth's theory of the nature or reflection on the nature of beauty. Okay, today, all right, we are going to be answering this question. How does the speaker's poetic style develop the symbolic significance of the solitary reaper? Okay, so what is Wordsworth saying about beauty? What is he saying that is at the core of the nature of beauty? All right, well, let's go ahead and return to the poem. All right, on Friday's lecture, we did a detailed analysis of the first 2 stanzas of the poem. All right, if you want a review of the details of that lecture, you can go back to Friday's lecture. Hopefully you have some kind of record in your notes. Hopefully you've been annotating your text as we move through. But the basic thing that happens in stanza 1 is that the speaker tells the reader, commands the reader to stop, to behold her, to listen to the Highland lass reaping and singing, cutting and binding the grain, filling up the valley that she is in with an overflowing sound of beautiful song. He then compares her song to a bird song chanting welcome notes to weary bands of travelers in Arabian sands. So her song is something that is like comforting or connected to a kind of balm for a weary person traveling through a dry and desert space. This is obviously metaphorical. We talked about that on Friday. The speaker then compares in another sort of parallel or juxtaposing comparison the song to the song of a cuckoo bird, breaking the silence of the seas among the farthest Hebrides. So the Hebrides, again, are islands off the coast of Scotland. The song of the reaper is compared to the song of a songbird breaking that silence, right, entering into that silence. Okay, it's an image of connectivity. It's an image of beauty's ability to bring people together, to interrupt the loneliness of life, to interrupt the silent and distant and far away experience that oftentimes can be our lives. All right, and after the first 2 octets, all right, we have a volta, right? The poem is 4 octets long. Naturally, in between those 2, Wordsworth uses a volta. Now, this is not an Italian sonnet. There is a volta in an Italian sonnet between the 8th and 6th, the octet and the sestet. Here, there's a volta halfway through the poem. The speaker's tone shifts. All right, up to this point, the speaker has been characterized. His attitude toward the solitary reaper is one of marvel, one of respect. Stop here, or gently pass. Don't interrupt. Right? One of marvel, one of awe, one of respect. And here, his tone shifts ever so slightly as he asks, "Will no one tell me what she sings?" Okay? This question signals a tone shift as the speaker moves from marveling at the beauty of the Reaper's song to being frustrated. This is a new attitude we haven't seen yet. Frustrated by the fact that he cannot understand it completely. The fact that he says, "Will no one tell me what she sings," implies that he's asked around. It implies that he's frustrated. Will no one help me out with this? Will no one interpret what she's singing? Will no one tell me what she sings? Here, what the speaker wants to do, now obviously, literally, he's just saying, will you tell me what the words are? I want to know what the words are. Okay, there's no that is not inherently bad or wrong, but what is implied here connotatively, all right, what is suggested by the question is that the speaker wants to rationalize the song's meaning, to understand it completely, to analyze it, and in that way make the song his song by understanding it in his mind and grasping its meaning completely. Okay? So he's moved from beholding it, which is something you do with your mind, and meditating on its nature, which is something you do with your mind, to attempting to understand it completely, to trying to grasp it. Here, this question reminds me of the internal motivation of the character Frankenstein, or the character Robert Walton at the beginning of Frankenstein, who is allergic to, both of whom are allergic to limits of their understanding. Limits to the extent to which they can rationalize the world around them. It reminds me also of my own frustrations as a believer, as a person of faith. When I run into an aspect or an attribute of God that I can't fully wrap my mind around, that highlights my finitude and God's infinitude, instead of simply beholding it, instead of simply stopping, resting, and enjoying the infinite, marvelous beauty of God, I want to pick and pry and grow frustration because I cannot understand completely the beauty that I'm being exposed to. I want to rationalize it completely. This leads to a kind of frustration in the speaker. Now, as he attempts to rationalize and understand the poem, he asks two questions. He begins to consider the theme, the meaning of the song. Perhaps the plaintive, that means sad, the plaintive numbers flow for old, unhappy, far off things and battles long ago. Now, this reaper, this Highland lass, right, she's no warrior. She's a field hand, all right? She doesn't fight. So this would be, if she were singing indeed of battles or far off things from a long time ago, if she were singing a song that was epic A song like the Aeneid, a song like Homer's Odyssey or Homer's Iliad of long, far-off things and battles long ago, it certainly would have nothing to do with the solitary reaper's day-to-day experiences. It would be far off from her. And as the speaker attempts to rationalize or understand the beauty that he is being exposed to, he instinctually assumes that the reaper's song is something that is far off from her because, all right, the implication is nothing quite so beautiful, nothing quite so moving could possibly be original. Nothing quite so beautiful, nothing quite so meaningful could possibly be related to the simple day-to-day life of a peasant woman. On the other hand, it also suggests that the speaker looks at the reaper's song and recognizes that perhaps this woman could sing an epic on par with Homer and Virgil. He seems to be conflicted. He seems to not fully understand that this woman is as fully capable of producing beauty on the scale of the traditional and conventional forms of beauty associated with Virgil, Homer, Dante. Those that sang of old, far off things, battles. But then the speaker corrects himself, right? After further meditation, he has to think about it longer. He has to check these assumptions. He has to meditate and behold for a few more lines. Or is it some more humble lay? Lay just means song. Humble means, humble there meaning sort of low. Or mundane. Mundane just means daily, normal, okay? Not epic, not far off, but daily, normal. Is it some humble lay, some familiar matter of today? Not of something old, not of something from a far off time, but rather of something from today. Something that has to do with the daily life of a peasant person. Something that has to do with the daily life of a commoner. Something that has to do with your daily life. Could that possibly be what the song is about? Some natural sorrow, loss, or pain that has been and may be again. Here, the speaker, after further meditation, understands that this beautiful song, it could indeed be a simple, familiar matter of today, that beauty can be found in the mundane and the small, even as it can be found in the old and the epic and the far off. That beauty is found in both. That beauty is both old and new. That beauty is both far off, distant, historical, and also near at hand, close, in proximity, and daily. In the next stanza, the speaker's tone shifts once again. His frustration after the volta, which leads him to misinterpret and then to re-evaluate, okay, gives way to, in the first line of the final stanza, what we would call peace. He makes peace with the fact that he cannot fully rationalize the theme, the meaning that the maiden sang. As if her song could have no ending, I saw her singing at her work, and o'er the sickle bending. Here he returns to the sublime image of her singing and bending over her sickle. He returns to simply beholding. Instead of frustration at the fact that he cannot fully wrap his rational mind around what he's being exposed to. Okay? He abandons this need. He abandons this allergy to the own limits of his understanding. And he simply listens. He rests. He's still. I listened, motionless and still. Okay, so the poet here reiterates twice that he is motionless and also motionless, right? In other words, his ability to listen and fully engage with the song, right, is dependent on his ability to stop. His ability to behold is contingent or connected to his ability or his willingness to stop, to be still. To experience wonder and awe. And as I mounted up the hill, the music in my heart I bore, long after it was heard no more. Okay? So in the end, right, the speaker understands the song more intimately, perhaps more deeply. Okay, so another way of saying in his heart would be perhaps, we would say, especially in the Christian tradition, in his soul. Okay, he carries the song with him in his soul, right, and continues to meditate on it in his head long after it is over. Hence the poem, right? The poem is an exercise of him beholding the beauty again and again. Just as our attempt to analyze and understand the poem is an exercise in beholding, of stopping, of listening, motionless and still. He holds the song in his heart even as he meditates on it in his head, in a posture of humility, in a posture of listening. Okay? So, after analyzing the text of the poem, right, we have some questions that we need to answer. First, what is the symbolic significance of the solitary reaper? What does she symbolize? What is the speaker's tone toward her through the course of the poem? How does it develop? And finally, what is the unifying thematic impression of the poem as a whole? Okay? Well, let's answer those questions together. First, the symbolic significance of the solitary reaper. Wordsworth uses the reaper as a symbol of a romantic understanding of beauty. Okay? The speaker's description of her and his poem meditating on her illustrates the deeper philosophical reflection on the nature of beauty hosted by Wordsworth in the lyric. Okay? So, generally speaking, what does the solitary reaper symbolize? A romantic understanding of beauty, a romantic aesthetic philosophy. All right? What is the speaker's attitude toward the solitary reaper? Well, it develops over the course of the poem. First, the speaker recognizes the reaper's individuality, emphasizing it all throughout the course of the first stanza, and marvels at the power of her song to bring solace and rest to the weary and to bring joy to the lonely and isolated. That's dramatized for us in the language of the second stanza. See how we're drawing general conclusions from the details of the text? He also marvels at the sublimity of her actions. Now, that's a word you're familiar with if you've been paying attention in class. It's a word that refers to tensions, the inherent tensions in the natural world, tensions between life and death, beauty and terror, and all other forms of tensions. We call those dialectics. Romantics thought those were the essence of beauty, all right? Which are connected to larger cycles of life and death and creation and destruction in the natural world. All right? That's dramatized for us in the speaker's emphasis on the reaping and the singing and the cutting and the binding. His tone shift when he is frustrated by his inability to fully understand, to fully solve the riddle of the song's mysterious beauty, is indicated for us, right, in the third stanza, in which he is confronted by his need to own the song for himself, to understand all of it. But finally, at the end of his meditation, he accepts the mystery for what it is and simply listens at peace with the limits of his understanding. While, significantly, he doesn't just say, well, I'll never understand it, so I'm going to walk away. Guess it doesn't matter. Guess there's no truth there. Guess it didn't mean anything at all in particular. You see, that's not what he does. He doesn't walk away a relativist. He walks away with a notion that he doesn't understand everything and commits to continued meditation on the nature and the significance of the song long after it is ended. This is very relatable, especially to the Christian person of faith who worships a sublime, mysterious, and powerful God who communicates himself to his people in ways that are oftentimes very clear, but sometimes deeply mysterious and difficult to understand. We do not walk away from that experience saying, well, I guess there's nothing to know. We walk away from that experience of being awed by the mystery of God saying, I guess my understanding is limited. And I commit to continuing to meditate on the nature and the significance of the beauty of God. Okay, in the same way here, the speaker makes a similar commitment. Now, obviously, Wordsworth's not a Christian, but I'm just pointing out commonalities in the wisdom of this approach to beauty. He finds a balance between meditating on beauty, setting his mind on it and his heart on it, and needing to make it his, mastering its meaning and nature completely. Okay? So, what is the unifying theme of the poem? What, in a detailed way, does the solitary reaper symbolize, and the speaker's engagement and interaction with the solitary reaper? Well, here's how I summed it up. For Wordsworth, beauty, as embodied by the solitary reaper, is individual and unique, even as it is connective and transcendent. Semicolon, it must be meditated on and carefully beheld, even as it defies complete interpretation and rational explanation. It is old and timeless, even as it is continually renewed and present in the mundane experiences of everyday life. It inspires joy and comfort, even as it expresses shared sorrows and shared pain. That's why, the speaker, interestingly, is so overcome with the beauty and the joy and the pleasure of listening to the song, but constantly reiterates the fact that the song is melancholy, it's plaintive, it's sad, it's sorrowful. In all these ways, Wordsworth suggests that beauty is, keyword here for the romantic, sublime, filled with the tensions that are implicit in the image of a common woman singing and reaping a mysteriously beautiful song throughout her daily, mundane life. It's a great poem, The Solitary Reaper. It's a great meditation on the nature of beauty. I think it applies wonderfully to the person of faith's pursuit of knowledge of a sublime, mysterious, and beautiful God. But even if you do not like the poem, and even if you are not interested in meditating on those ideals for their own inherent worth, I hope that you will see that what we have done here is we have simply exercised a reasonable reading of the text, looking at the details, right? And how these details collect together to develop reasonable interpretive assertions that are associated with our analysis. Okay? So, I've obviously done this for a while and have had a lot of formal training, so whenever I put these things into words, it might not exactly mirror the way that you put them into words, but what you can mirror, what we all can do as rational readers, is we can connect our observations from the specifics of the text to the general impression of the text. All right, what I'd be much more impressed with on your test is if you, all right, didn't just try and copy the things that I've said in a sort of hacky way, but rather if you developed a reading in your own words, all right, that was faithful to the text and reasonable. All right, so tell me what this poem means. Analyze this poem's meaning, right, in words that are naturally occurring to you, that are within your vocabulary, all right, that are accurate, that are precise, but are most importantly reasonable. All right, so that's the Solitary Reaper. I hope you had a great time studying it, and I hope you have a great day.